Bosch's bi-turbo circular saw, 18 volt, 184 millimeter. So this is the GKS18v68gc. So this thing has the equivalent power to an 1800 watt corded power tool. It runs a 184 millimeter blade. To get maximum power, you want to have a 5 amp battery on it at a minimum. And Bosch also now has a compatible battery range. It's called Amp Share, and it's compatible with a bunch of other brands. So that is something that adds a little bit of functionality to that system too. Now, like I mentioned, this thing can run on a guide rail, but it still is a circular saw. It's not a track saw. I'll explain more in detail later. You can use it on your Festool track, your Makita track, which is nice too. This saw has a really nice depth adjustment. I'll also get into that in more detail. It's got 68 millimeters of depth cutting capacity. Speed control, you can select your speed. If you're cutting through something like aluminium or composite, you may want to slow down the RPM just a little bit. And you can also pop it into eco mode. So if you're cutting something super lightweight, like a 12 millimeter pine cladding, you probably don't need to run the saw at full power. So if you stick it into eco mode, it's going to give you about 30% more battery runtime. Now this does currently retail for about $575, which comes with the skin and just a really nice carry case. It does actually make it one of the more expensive saws on the market though. Alright, so my first impressions on this saw. Now, this saw is pretty big, it's pretty heavy, comes in at around 4.3 kilos. That's without a battery. Then you stick an 8 amp battery on it, and yeah, it's pretty hefty. It's not the type of saw you want to be jumping up and cutting rafters with or up on a roof with. It's just way too big for that. It's a powerful saw, but you kind of want to keep it on the ground. Now, it's got a really nice base plate. Bosch has been doing these massive base plates lately, and I do tend to like it. You get nice steady cuts. As you can see in this base plate, it's got a bunch of grooves for different types of tracks. Now, I reviewed the 18v68c a couple years ago, and like one of my main worries with that saw was the depth adjustment. I'm not a huge fan of how you tighten it up. It just feels a little bit loose to me. It doesn't feel like it locks properly. And I don't know, it feels just a little bit cheap. It feels like one of the cheapest parts of the saw. And I mentioned it in my review, and it had a little knob back here. And basically that was the depth adjustment, was adjusting that, and it felt cheap. It just never felt like a good design. And that was the first thing that broke on that saw. The whole mechanism sort of just fell apart. And yeah, let me show you. All right, so this is that old model. This thing is super beat up, but as you can see, I've resorted to a batten screw to actually lock it off. The whole thing fell apart, and I wasn't able to lock off my base plate for a long time. But in this new saw, they have fixed that problem. You now just push this red button up the top and your base plate moves. So I'm really glad they addressed that. Now, not only did they go from a terrible locking mechanism for the base plate on one saw, I think they've gone with the best one I've ever seen on any saw. This thing is just so good to use. Now, it comes in really handy when you want to plunge the saw. So you can literally just hold your hand on the top, push it and plunge the blade in, and it's super easy. Now, speaking of plunging, yeah, this thing is going to work on a track. It's really handy for cutting things like flooring, decking, screening, things of that nature. I don't think this is going to replace a plunge saw though. It just doesn't have the finesse of a track saw. It really is still a job site saw. So it's not going to take the place of the plunge saw, but when you want to cut a straight line in a pinch, this is excellent. It's not going to have the same accuracy as a track saw. However, for site work, it is a perfect compromise. And it means you don't have to grab two saws out of the car. Now the other benefit is Bosch's track saw, their 18-volt track saw, it's actually a little underpowered if you're cutting things like decks. It has a really small blade on it, and when that blade gets a little bit blunt, it tends to bend when cutting, you know, Australian hardwoods. So this saw, bigger blade, bigger motor, more power, it just breezes through your hardwood decks, which is nice. Now you can also connect your phone to this saw to adjust your RPMs. So if you have a preferred speed for cutting aluminium, you can select it on your phone and assign it to a number on the screen here. It's not something that I've currently used, but it is an option. Now the cons of this saw, I'm going to say really the only con I can think of is the size and the weight. It may put some people off. Alright, so is this the right saw for you? Let's break it down a little bit. So if you're going to use this saw to make money, you know, you're a chippy for a trade, then this saw is a no-brainer. You're essentially getting two saws for the price of one. You're kind of getting a track saw and a really good circular saw for the price of one. So yeah, if you're making money with this saw, it's definitely worth the investment, especially if you're on the Bosch platform. I wouldn't even consider the other saw. Just spend the money now and reap the rewards of that investment. Now, if you're not on the Bosch platform and you do plan on using this saw to make money, I still do think it is a good investment. You then got to look at batteries and a charger, so then it pushes that price up even more. However, I do find the Bosch system super solid. I've owned Makita, DeWalt, Milwaukee, and Bosch, and the Bosch batteries are actually my preferred battery system. I do feel like they're solid. I kind of feel like they last longer too. There's no science behind that claim, just a feeling. And yeah, I've got a bunch of DeWalt and Makita batteries that are no longer working. I don't have that with the Bosch. So yeah, if you're in the trade and you're looking to jump onto this platform, I do think it's a good move. Now, if you're more of a weekend warrior, is this worth your money? Not sure whether it is. If it's not something you're using every day, do you really want to be spending this much money on a saw? That's up to you. But just keep in mind that you are sort of getting two saws for the price of one with the track functionality. So there might be something there that you can sort of justify in your mind on, yeah, it's worth spending that money on. But yeah, that's my thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. Yeah, we'll see you in the next one.